Welcome to Read Weens.
We're back.
Oh! Last time we read Moon Knight?
Yeah.
Was that the last one we did? We read Moon Knight. Today,
Yes.
we're reading Frankenstein. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
Wollstonecraft.
Yeah, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin Shelley.
Long name.
It's her parents' name.
I wish I had parents.
Yes. Led a very tragic life.
Yeah.
But, anyway, we'll get into that, but we're back.
We're back. It's been a year.
Yeah.
Screen Weens is also back if you care more about movies.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to read anymore.
Typically
Kids
not.
these days.
But, we just so happen to, grown up and we read.
Yeah, we're old now.
Yeah.
We were old last year, too. And now we're
That's
even
true.
older.
Yeah.
You can see the wrinkles in our face.
Yeah. We've graduated from just reviewing comic books for that decent stint.
We read Dune.
We read Dune. We read
We read
Worm.
Star Wars books.
We read Star Wars.
Even
books.
when we were reading, like, adult books, it doesn't really feel like adult books.
I feel like the most adult we went with the show was probably like Dream Story.
Mm-hmm.
The goat guy.
John Darnielle.
John
yeah,
Darnielle
like, even though his books are, like, pretty easy to read, like...
Yeah, it's more
like the
mature.
subject material and
Yeah.
the ethos behind it, I guess, is probably more adult related.
For sure. But yeah. But here we are. We're graduating to the big leagues.
Yeah, gonna start reading
Classic
Infinite Jest.
literature. Yeah.
That's next.
It's not next.
Maybe not.
But maybe one of these days. Who knows? We'll
Yeah,
see.
it's a brisk little read.
Yeah.
I say that as a joke, but, like, I know it's not comparable, because it probably is what people say, but, like, Dune, I thought that was a brisk little read.
Yeah, I think had I not, like, immersed myself within, like, the world of the movies first, I probably wouldn't have been able to get into Dune as easy. Mm-hmm. But having that, like, frame of reference just made it so reading the book was like drinking water. Or sand.
I love drinking sand.
Yeah.
You ever just get a cup of sand, cup of water, mix them together, stir it up? Smoothie. It's called a desert smoothie.
That's what I call a tropical drink.
But I forgot my drink, speaking of which.
Oh, I didn't.
Is it recording still? Better double check before we sit here for half an hour talking about Frankenstein.
True.
Wow, Thomas, you look like a model.
Speaking of models, John Krasinski won the Sexiest Man of the Year award. Just wanted to get that out there real quick.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, that's weird.
I mean, he's an attractive enough fellow, I guess. I don't know. Huh? Oh, did she say sexiest?
Yeah.
No, he's not sexy, though. He seems dependable.
You know
Real
who's sexy?
Nice guy.
Frankenstein's monster.
Yes.
So I read, did you end up, we were talking,
No.
Okay. So we both read the same version of Frankenstein, which was the 31 version, right? Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's the date when she revised it.
Which is, the revised version. From her own words, at least in this introduction, she's like, I didn't change much.
She didn't change, like, a whole lot. It seems like she expanded upon stuff, added more descriptive bits, but also some, like, I read up on some of the differences. Some of them seem to kind of... They're, like, small changes, but they have kind of bigger...
Implications
involving kind of Frankenstein and the role of fate and how that kind of plays into it. Because to my understanding, the original 1818 text has more of the outlook on Frankenstein where it's his fault. Whereas in the version we read, it's more of like, yes, he's like, it's still kind of his fault, but he's like compelled, or it's like he's fated to do it regardless. So
evil by virtue of fate.
Yeah. And apparently the monster is made to be more evil in this version, more of a representation of evil. I mean, I can see it in little bits and pieces, but I still think it comes off as mostly sympathetic.
Yeah.
But I mean, it obviously has its own misunderstandings. Like, all right, I guess we're diving right in.
Yeah. So most people should know the basic premise of Frankenstein.
Yes.
Most of the adaptations throughout history have either been completely different or have skewed different based on a lot of things. But the base premise is a man creates life and then abandons that life, and the monster goes crazy from everyone hating him for being ugly and scary.
Yep.
And he turns evil and kills everyone close to his creator.
And because he wants his creator to create the bride. The bride is typically, if not actually in certain adaptations, then it's mentioned because it's in the book, but she doesn't come to life like in Bride of Frankenstein. Spoiler alert.
I should watch that movie. Still haven't.
What?
Yeah.
It's got
remember.
It's got the little people in jars. What?
Like Brainiac?
Like
Candor, the city from Krypton? Little people in jars!
It's just some guy, Dr. Pretorius, tries to convince Frankenstein to build the bride. And he's like, look, I'm an amazing scientist like you. I've got little people in jars. And it's just like...
No, remember the first time we watched Frankenstein for the podcast, that was my first time seeing the first one.
Yeah.
And then I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, you need to watch Bride of Frankenstein. That jar scene, excellent.
Best scene in cinema.
So
But we're not fucking talking about cinema. We're talking about literature. We're talking about prose.
True. Yeah, so... But London, film is literature. Anyway, can be.
True. With subtitles on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so... I guess, like, the TLDR... Frankenstein is rich.
Piece of fucking shit.
His cousin comes to live with him, who is later changed into this version not to be his cousin, but he still calls her cousin all the time.
Yeah, they're like not blood related, but they're, raised as siblings practically.
In the original text, they're cousins though. So it's like, yeah. Cool. Anyway. But
he refers to her as like his sister wife at one point.
Yeah.
Which, like...
Kicking it old school.
It seems right for rich people. Sure.
Yeah. But, sorry, I had to go in for that vicious swig of water right after saying,
You were just really thirsty thinking about the two cousins.
It's true. But yeah, so... His mother and father are both like, hey, you two would probably make a pretty handsome couple. Why don't the two of you, like...
Starting from when they're like 8.
Yeah, so they're basically...
Oh, you two? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're basically groomed into liking each other. But they like each other regardless. And yeah, they... basically, he grows up, gets really into science. His mother dies, and then his father sends him away to a school where he learns and befriends a professor. He goes to school with his friend Henry, like he travels there with him, and then they end up going separate ways. And then Frankenstein builds his monster real quick. It's not
immediately regrets it. I didn't realize how immediate it was. In this one, monster doesn't even do anything. The creature's literally just laying there. And he's like, oh, yeah, fuck.
It's like the second he sees it, the life jolts into it. It just shakes him to his core.
And he's like, I am out of here. And he just leaves.
Yep, leaves. The monster. Well, he goes back home. I really like the formatting in the book. How it's
layers upon layers of people telling each other stories.
Mm-hmm. But, like, you stick with Frankenstein's perspective for a while, you go back home with him, you find out his younger brother was murdered, like his kid brother, murdered, left in a field. So the family's, like, dealing with all of that. Meanwhile, also, like, the maid, his, like, his backup girlfriend is being,
accused.
Basically, yeah.
And he knows it's not her. He knows that it was his creature. He just feels it, and he has the evidence to change that, and he's like, eh.
Yeah, he doesn't really tell anyone, and, like, any efforts he does where he's like, no, it couldn't be her, I saw it was someone else, or whatever. I saw the true assailant. It was a monster. Though, like, everyone's just kind of like, what the fuck? Whatever.
Yeah.
So it's all to no avail. Elizabeth is, like, broken up by this because she really likes her too, and can't convince anyone. And she kind of, like, is made to feel bad because she believes her friend is innocent, but everyone around her is like, well, the evidence points to her being guilty. So, but yeah, so he just kind of lets that happen. He kind of tries.
She dies.
Yeah, she dies, and then, then he goes back to the field, and then the monster is there.
And he tells him a story.
Yes.
And we follow him for, like, 4 chapters or something like that?
It's like 6 or so chapters. It's a decent chunk of the book, but yeah, then we basically, he finds Frankenstein's journal. It's, like, in his jacket or something, and he wears it. I don't remember how he gets it.
Yeah, I think so, because the Frankenstein just fucking bolts, so...
Yeah, so, that'll come into play later, but he ends up, being chased and shot at and stuff, and ends up kind of, finding refuge within a cottage, like a little nook in there that, like, nobody can really see into, and then he watches this family and learns how to speak and read through the son, who has recently had a wife who doesn't speak English. So it's very convenient, but whatever. It works. So yeah, he learns how to read, and then he's a big fan of what's the book he really likes? Not Dante's Inferno. It's I know it. Whatever. Oh gosh, what?
God, these illustrations are so sick.
They do look.
I read the illustrated version of this by Bernie Wrightson, and the illustrations of this are just tremendous.
God, what?
I don't remember what book it is.
Oh my. Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's one of those, like, biblical inspired epic type books. But
Was it Paradise Lost?
Yeah, it might be Paradise Lost. Yeah, it's Paradise Lost. Anyway. But yeah.
Boom. Paradise Lost.
Really likes that book. Adopts a lot of his personality from that, I assume. I don't know. I haven't read Paradise Lost. But yeah, and then he reads Frankenstein's journal and gets really mad at him, and then decides he's going to reveal himself to the family, hoping it'll work out. It doesn't. So they move out. He burns the cottage, leaves, and goes on a revenge quest for Frankenstein. But then after, like, kind of torturing him for a bit, he's like, I'll give you an out. Build me a mate.
Yeah.
And then Frankenstein's like, okay, I'll do it. And then he backs off. And then Frankenstein kills his best friend, Henry, who we've not mentioned up to this point, but we'll get around to.
The monster?
The colonizer?
The monster kills him?
Yeah.
You said Frankenstein.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Tomato at this point.
No, they're not the same!
Well, I've heard some interpretations
That Frankenstein is the real monster.
that it's like a psychological kind of thing, which you could read it that way, but I think
that's a boring read.
Yeah, it's very.
I like it that it's a big monster man. It's also really sexy.
Yeah, it's like I don't really think reading it that way. I feel like even if they're separate beings, like that theme kind of still works. It still like represents that like alternate side of Frankenstein in a way.
Yeah.
But anyway,
he doesn't build him the mate. So he starts killing everyone.
Yeah.
He almost goes to prison for the murder of Henry. But he doesn't? What happened?
He had an alibi.
Got it. Okay.
I think.
I couldn't remember. Yeah. It's been a bit since we actually read this.
Yeah, it's been like a month or so.
Yeah.
So I even thought of the book.
So then he goes back, and then his cousin, wife, sister dies in front of him. Like, he can see the monster killing her pretty much. So then he goes on a revenge quest into the Arctic. He's like chases them all across the world, which is where the book opens. The book opens with this old captain man who's like, I don't have any friends.
Dear sister.
I wish I had some
Fuck you
friends.
for carrying. That's the...
I wish I had friends. And he's like, guess what? I found a friend. He was out in the middle of the ice, and he keeps talking about some horrible monster he's chasing.
Yeah.
And then they both die at the end?
We don't see the monster die. He takes Frankenstein's body and...
Oh, and then the monster says, I'm gonna go kill myself now.
Yeah. I'm gonna go burn his body, and then I'm gonna jump into the pyre.
Yeah.
And it's like...
He's like, all this suffering will end. Yeah. That's the basics of the book.
More or less. Now we can dive into all the deeper parts we want to get into.
There are books that I'm like... that I finally read after 150 years, that I'm like, man, that was really solid. Like Dracula. I thought Dracula was great.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite book.
It's fucking phenomenal.
I finished it and I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, like Dracula is like pulp compared to this. But
and I think Dracula's great.
Yeah,
but
Dracula's fantastic.
And I saw some negative reviews of this talking about the way that the dialogue is written between like the male characters, because it's very obvious. It is obvious that it has a woman writer behind it, because the men have so much depth to them.
Apparently not seen as for a long chunk of time.
Was her husband credited, right?
Yeah, because it was originally published under his name anonymously, but he was the one who submitted it, so everyone was like, oh, yeah, it was Percy Shelley who wrote this. And I think, I don't know how far that stretched, but I think even in like the Universal, like Boris Karloff, James Whale one, they go back in the second one and do a whole Mary Shelley thing, but pretty sure they credit it to Percy Shelley in that movie, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've seen
from a modern lens reading it, to me at least, it feels obvious. The way that they're written,
of course.
The way that they talk to each other, it's really refreshing, actually. It's almost poetic, every line of the dialogue, especially from Frankenstein as he learns more and more. And he's just saying these deeply moving things. And it's like, man, this guy's, the creature's the best. I hope he doesn't fucking kill himself at the end of this book.
It would have been nice. It's kind of like how I always like have the hope that I'll read that version of, or not read, watch that version of King Kong where he doesn't get shot off the Empire at the end.
It's just, this book's so tragic. And the scene when the chapters where you're following the creature, I'm just like, this is incredible. Mm-hmm. This guy's so cool. He's learning. Like, this guy's the best. Yeah. And he's like, I'm going to reveal myself to the family. And there's a part of me that's just convinced. I'm like, yep, it'll be fine. Surely no one could throw away this beautiful man. Had
it just been the blind old man, it might have been.
Yeah.
But even then, in alternate versions, bandits show up and do fuck around. So, it's
just deeply depressing. Because you can see... Even if you're deciding that this is more like fate-driven stuff, you can see where Frankenstein fails ultimately. Like, even if, it was fate for him to make the monster, it's our actions that make that monster monstrous.
Yeah.
You know, it's the abandonment of a child. It's the the abandonment of a child by society and by his father. Mm-hmm. It's like, what? And he turned out to be a monster because everyone hated him and called him ugly?
Yeah. No, for sure. And it definitely, like, in that vein, there are points where, like, you can almost see, like, through the modern lens. It is just, like, I don't know, the bastard child who grew up to be, like, a thug, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's just, like, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, here's this rich guy, and he's abandoning his child because his child is poor and not of, like, a pure bloodline.
Yeah, and shocker, Mary Shelley didn't have a great relationship with her father, so...
There's some really fascinating insights just in the introductions of these. Mm-hmm. There's an introduction by Stephen King that starts with, guys, I know the book is a little boring. Or,
what?
He's like, well, no, he talks about how from, like, a modern lens, like, it's not an exciting book for a lot of the chunks of time. But he's like, then he talks about, like, the merits and why it's so moving. And I understand, like, from a standard viewpoint there.
Well, yeah.
But unfortunately, it's peak, and you guys are missing out.
Yeah, I never... From a modern viewpoint, none of the shit I like is liked, so... Or very...
Cursed to be too swag, me and Thomas, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
too old.
Too old. Our souls. We were meant to be born in the 1800s. No,
I like to think that we're
too young.
We're like supposed to be like Jean-Luc Picard's like era.
Yeah, people will understand. People will get it.
Yeah.
I say this about Frankenstein as if it's not like one of the most celebrated books of all time.
Yeah, right. No,
but it just feels like our generation is kind of suffering from not wanting to read or watch or connect with anything older than 20
honestly,
years.
Of classic literature, like this and this and Dracula are probably like tip of the iceberg for a lot of people our age.
Yeah. When I say that, but like when you look at old literature, this is... I don't have anything other than this, you know. Yeah. I own that Journey to the West. I haven't read it yet. But
and to be fair, a lot of the girls I went to school with read a lot more classic literature than I did. So it's like, all right, fair enough.
Well,
fair enough. But they took AP classes and shit.
I hate to say it, but in general, I would assume that girls probably just take in more art that's meaningful than boys.
It's true. I was, when I did take honors English, I was the only boy in the class, but I ended up fucking off because I didn't like homework. I had like 80 missing assignments by the end.
Yeah, my honors English I was into, or I think I took AP Lit, and that I was into. I think I probably just cheated on like 2 assignments and just used Spark Notes or something. But I did read most of the stuff. But I remember, I might have even told this story on this podcast before, but I had a friend who was supposed to do a book talk on The Alchemist. Mm-hmm. And then went up there and then just said the plot synopsis for Full Metal Alchemist. And then the teacher was just like, the teacher didn't want to be there. He was cool. I like that teacher a lot, but he also just didn't really give a shit. And he's like, well, none of that was true.
Well, might be a better book. I don't know. I haven't read The Alchemist. It sounds like an interesting book, though, from what I hear about it.
Yeah, there are a lot of books that I didn't read that I wish I had, but you know, it was high school. I was over it. I'm like, I just want to play video games. And now as an adult, I'm like, man, I wish I was reading when I was that age.
Yeah, I feel it. I'm the same way.
Because I'm like, there are so many movies and books that I've read in the past few years that have like altered the course of my life. And then I think about video games, and I'm like, they just feel like blips. Like, there are meaningful video games. I'm not saying that video games aren't art or whatever, but, like, a lot of them aren't. Or a lot of them aren't meaningful to me. And I played them, I beat them, I had fun in the moment, but that was it.
I feel it. I didn't do a whole lot of video games, but I didn't get into, like, really, really good movies until, like, after graduating high school, really. Before that, it was just mostly anime and horror movies, so...
But even then, I feel like I would rather just spend my time watching 4 2-hour fine movies than playing 1 8-hour video game.
Yeah, no, it's so... I beat maybe 1 game a year. It's so hard.
And it's weird to think, but I know that physically you have to put in more inputs into a video game, but I am just so much less engaged and invested in a video game. Than reading a good classic book. Am I right, guys?
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, back to Frankenstein.
I think there's a lot to be said about the way that Frankenstein moves himself throughout the world as a rich person, and seemingly getting away with everything. None of the things that happen to him until the very end are actually a detriment to him, his livelihood. He's fine. He lives. He gets accused of a murder, but he's fine. But then a maid who, a lower class person, gets accused earlier. She's immediately killed. Nobody believes her. But him, he's of high status. He's fine. Mm-hmm. And then it's a complete juxtaposition against the monster or the creature or Bill, as I like to call him. Bill, yeah. He looks like a Bill. Who, no matter what he does, no matter how eloquent he is, no matter how much he puts effort into the relationships he's trying to build, no one will see him as anything other than a freak and a pure evil, pretty much.
Yeah.
And how long can a creature take that before they just become what they've been told they are?
Yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting idea for the time. I'm sure it was probably observed in society. I'm sure they had freak shows and stuff at that point, but I know John Merrick happened probably his life was probably 100 years after this book came out, which is weird because there's kind of a lot of...
Is that Elephant Man?
Yeah. There's a lot of correlations between the two stories in a lot of ways. But yeah, so I wonder, I in the research I did on Mary Shelley, I didn't see anything where it had mentioned that, but she probably didn't write it down or anything. But,
yeah. I would have, at the same time, she'd made so many, diaries and stuff, I wonder if there's, what's in there. I would love to read some of those. I know they're published.
I know, I read an excerpt from the one that was talking about a dream she had after the death of her first child, which happened before she wrote this book. And there's a line in the book that kind of harkened back to that line from the diary entry. I don't remember the line specifically, but I remember the gist of it, where she talks about she woke up at her and Percy and they, had the baby, but it was cold, so they wrapped it up and they took it over by the fire and rubbed it and warmed it and it came back to life, which is what they do in the beginning when they Frankenstein comes to the ship and is brought aboard. They bring him by the fire, wrap him up, and warm him up with brandy. They don't rub him up, unfortunately, but... Or they might. I don't know. I haven't read it in a month, but that was one of the lines where it's just yeah, that sort of stuff just cuts. If I was just reading the book, that line just kind of passes by, but having that context of that diary entry just makes it just such a fucking sad line. Yeah. And it's the hope that the dream that she didn't get, because Frankenstein does come back to life in that moment, even if it's for a fleeting amount of time in the narrative. But
yeah, I think even without the context, there are certain lines in this that feel so weighted, as if there's 100 more stories behind that single line, kind of thing. That line, there are lines in there that feel like almost throwaway lines, but that like it's very obvious Mary Shelley put that in there for a reason, whether that was to, quantify some of her own sorrow, or whether it was just like what she thought was narratively creepy. Because it's also interesting because she wrote this not as a joke, but as like a little contest between friends.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy to think about. That's like, we're gonna have a little contest who can write the scariest story. And then you just write the greatest piece of fiction ever, or it's like, what the hell?
I mean, that was a very, very famous summer spent with, Lord Byron, who is a huge, dark romantic poet.
Yeah. I would love to read the other 3 stories that were...
Yeah, I know...
I hope they're all dog shit.
I know the one is based on Lord Byron, and he's, it's, cited as, an early vampire
Which one?
tale. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head.
Oh, I thought you meant the one starring Jet Li.
No, unfortunately not.
Based on an old Lord Byron poem.
Yes. But yeah, outside of the context of Mary Shelley, I don't know a whole lot about Lord Byron, though. So, I heard he's a dick.
Yeah. But lots to think about, lots to explore.
Yeah.
I stopped myself from reading this again because I wanted to talk about it with, my fresh, first read thoughts. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those that I think I will revisit over and over throughout my life and get more and more and different things depending on how old I am. There's pieces of media, there's movies, there's literature that have just felt vastly different to me. I think, as an example, for a movie I rewatched a year ago, I think Boyhood really hit me a lot differently than it did when I first watched it. There's been a lot of movies that just, now that I'm an adult and decently into I've been an adult for nearly 10 years.
I know. It's crazy to think about.
And there's it's so weird. But it informs how we view these stories in a really interesting way. Mm-hmm. And it's just because we're older than Mary Shelley was when she wrote this, right?
Yeah, she was 17 when she
was 17 when she wrote that? Cannot be right.
Yeah.
Hold on, there's a timeline in here.
She was 17 when she wrote it. Or no, because she was born 1897 and the original came out 1818. I think she had penned it a couple years before. So she was probably 20 when it published? 19? And then she went back when she was older, revised it. Some stuff, just culturally, people were we don't like this stuff. So she changed some stuff. Other stuff she had reflected upon.
1997. Yeah, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that stood out to me because she was born exactly 200 years before us.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah, it's insane to think about.
Yeah, she was 19 when she started writing and 21 when it was published.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to think about that because it's I think we all have aspirations on what we want to do in life. And we all have dreams, And it's hard to be holy shit, that person did it when what the fuck was I doing when I was 19?
Yeah.
Working at Outback Steakhouse?
Yeah, I mean...
But at the other time, it's
there are other people who get successful later in life. And also...
Also, she was rich. And also, she had,
Also, life was shorter back then. So, obviously, you had to kind of live fuller, quicker. And also... our generation is kind of in a weird state of arrested development due to various circumstances. Yeah. But anyway. But Frankenstein.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found really interesting about this book that I kind of took note of while I was reading it was the character's relationship with nature. Mm-hmm. Anytime either Frankenstein or the monster are feeling at a low, they're both rejuvenated by nature. Frankenstein, even learning upon his brother's death and hurrying home, there's a comment in the book when he first arrives, he's it's such a beautiful day and it almost torments me, but I can't help but just like kind of relish in the beauty and what it feels like to be back home again after all the turmoil I just went through creating my son and abandoning him. But and then the monster, when he has no idea what anything even is, he kind of goes through his own like almost like the progress of mankind, because he's like stumbling in the dark and then goes outside, kind of like gets acquainted with nature, learns what fire is, and like becomes really dependent upon it and starts to like gather berries. And then he has to go, he kind of clears an area and has to kind of like explore further out, and it's like then finds other people and is able to like get information from them, and so forth. The wheels invented and then starts turning. So
yeah, it's really interesting because I think there's something to be said about that, about how, like, no matter what walk of life you're from, that, like, nature is there, like, Mother Earth is there as, like, a rejuvenating spirit, and humans are kind of trying to abandon that. Like, most people these days, including me and you specifically, will just sit inside all day. And then I'll go outside and I'll be like, what the fuck?
I
Okay. Me, I tend to just spend my days sitting inside.
I'm like Bilbo Baggins. I go out and I smoke on my porch. That, and I do go for walks every so often, so. But yeah.
As a whole, I think people are spending more and more time inside, and we're sometimes being disconnected from nature. It doesn't help because of COVID. We were inside for so long, and I still mask everywhere I go. Like
COVID's a big part of it, and I think living over here in the United States, just with our infrastructure and just like how we live in the concrete jungle and the cookie cutter fucking towns where they're all. It's all kind
like
of
if you do go outside, you're not experiencing nature anymore.
Yeah, and so
it's like, yeah, I have a tree outside.
That, and we live in like what's practical and not what's like cool. So we don't have any cool like cultural building.
Yeah,
I mean we do in like New York City or something, but we don't have a lot of those like
the bean.
The ball of yarn.
The ball of yarn. Let's go fucking road trip episode of Screen Weens. We go and drive to the ball of yarn.
Yeah.
It's only like a 40-hour drive, probably.
It's probably less than that.
Well, we're gonna drive slow.
I don't know where the ball of yarn is, so I imagine it's probably somewhere in the Midwest, though.
Probably.
But yeah. But yeah. So the nature thing, I thought that was like really interesting, and then they even get like at the end, it's like they go to a point where like even I guess you could view it as like an area where nature's kind of dead, the icelands, the Arctic. So,
and I think that's a good connective tissue between the two characters, because as much as like it also kind of informs our idea of I know they're not blood related, but spiritually that's like a father and a son.
Oh yeah.
And they move in similar ways, and they have similar intellects by the end too. Like it feels like he's kind of getting some traits from his father figure, even if his father figure is evil and has abandoned him.
Yeah.
And that might be something Mary Shelley's saying about like how she can see the things that she has gotten from her parents, even the things that she might not want to see.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sadly, she never knew her mother, but always aspired to kind of live up to her mother's legacy. For those who don't know, Mary Shelley's mom, kind of a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Mary Wollstonecraft wrote this little text you might have heard of called
The Bible? No.
The Rights of Woman. It's like proto-feminist, like... I know that like there are feminists who like dispute her being a feminist because she's a little more on the traditional side, but for her time, very progressive and obviously paved the way.
Yeah.
Or was a pioneer, and at the very least, but yeah.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and so was her father. Her father was like a writer who did both like political manifestos and while also like fictions that kind of like put his philosophies to the test. And one of his big followers was Percy Shelley. That's how he met Mary, and then two of them got together. But yeah, Mary Wollstonecraft ironically died because basically
Die in labor? What?
she didn't die in labor. What happened was the placenta broke up inside of her, and basically like I read like a little thing on it that was talking about like the kind of like politics of like midwifing at the time, where like there was apparently like a kind of social movement to like move away from male midwives, but like they would still come in if it was like a really serious situation. So that ended up happening, but the guy who showed up first was like kind of on the conservative side for doctors at the time and didn't believe in washing his hands, and had dirty fingernails, which caused an infection, which killed her like I think like 7 to 10 days after Mary Shelley was born. So yeah, the second doctor showed up like right as he had finished and like had kind of like was like, oh God, no. And yeah, he was just the first one to show up, and that was just kind of how it worked back in those days. You reached out to whoever was nearby, and whoever
You ring the doctor bell.
yeah, you go out to the window and shout, Doctor!
We need a doctor!
Quick! Someone needs a doctor that way. Approximately, a few blocks maybe. I don't know. Just go to where till the people stop screaming doctor. I don't know how shit worked back then in terms of that, but yeah.
Just horrible.
Probably just sent somebody running down to their house. But yeah. So yeah, that was pretty awful. And then, so Godwin got both Shelley and then her other kid that she had from a different guy. And I mean, I could dive deep into Mary Shelley's life and the relationship with her mother, because I mean, like, her mother like took a famous trip to Europe right in the middle of the fucking Reign of Terror.
Yeah.
And Mary Shelley went on that rebellious trip to Europe with her stepsister and Percy, where they like explored the countryside. And
didn't her sister like kill herself?
No,
She died young. One of them died young or something.
her I think Mary Wollstonecraft's other kid died young, or one of her siblings died pretty young. But what's it called? Oh shit. What was I gonna say? I know, like, before she and Percy Shelley got married, Percy's first wife killed herself.
Yeah.
That might be what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Which, that's a pretty dark note in that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically the TLDR on Mary Shelley's life, I mean, we just kind of gave her birth origin. She grew up, had, step siblings, and her half sister. She ended up, traveling Europe, and then getting married to Percy Shelley. They had children. A lot of those children died throughout the years. They had one surviving child, but I think Mary Shelley's like spirit completely broke after Percy died. Because basically he was out somewhere and he had to get on a boat to get back home, and it was stormy, and everyone was like, "Yep." Everyone was like, "Don't do it," and he's like,
I'm fine.
I know what I'm doing," and then he died. And yeah, apparently like she saw his like fucking waterlogged body in it. Yeah. Then she moved in with her father, who basically like controlled her for the rest of her life and tried to kind of like not allow her to write, and I want to say he tried to like block royalties from like Percy's work or something. I don't remember the specifics entirely, but he was a dickhead to his daughter. And then she ended up revising it in the 1831 or whatever, and then I don't know how her life ended. I don't know how she died.
I don't know. It just says she died. I'm sure it's in here. I don't remember. But okay, so 1812, Mary meets Percy and his wife Harriet. 1814, Mary, her stepsister Jane Clairmont, and Percy spend the summer traveling in Europe. She has a kid with Percy, but it's born premature and dies in March. And then William is born, which is her son. And that's when Percy's wife, who I'm pretty sure they're still married at this point, commits suicide. And Mary's half-sister commits suicide within a month.
Oh, okay.
And then they are... So, Percy's wife, Harriet, commits suicide in November. Percy and Mary are married in December. A month later.
Yep.
William Shelley dies when he's like 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Frankenstein. Oh no, William Shelley dies... so, she has the premature kid who dies like 3 months in.
Yeah.
And then her other son, William, dies a year after Frankenstein comes out.
I was going to say, yeah, he lived to be like a few years old or whatever. Yeah. Oof.
Lots of drama.
Yep. Lots of K-fab in there. But anyway.
Lots of drama and
Is it K-fab or K-fabe? I don't know. I'm not a zoomer. Never.
I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
You don't?
K-fab?
Oh god.
Are you young? Are you hip?
Am I further in the zeitgeist than you are?
Is that like swag? No.
It's basically
K-fab.
It's basically like just it's like wrestling tier, like just fake drama. It's like where you're just kind of milling it up for the audience, you know?
Yeah, no, I never heard that term.
Be like if I punched you in the throat right now.
And then I kissed you.
Yeah. No.
On the lips.
No, it's basically just manufactured, like, conflict between people and content for the content grind.
Ah.
At least that's my understanding of it through context. I don't know.
Yeah, never heard of this term. You're hip.
I guess.
You're young and hip still.
Woo!
London
Look
is
at
not.
me.
That's okay. I got Frankenstein.
You're the one who works in like a comic book shop.
Yeah, I don't know. No,
I work a graveyard job where I disassociate.
Yeah, I have no idea how I don't know.
Okay. Well, weird. Anyway.
I know what Ohio Riz is.
I don't.
I know what,
I think we just found the anomaly. The one thing. Because you're on TikTok and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I'm on TikTok. I mean, the problem is TikTok, like, it does, like, have a pretty good formula. So, like, I'm mostly seeing people my age.
I was going to say, is TikTok even hip anymore?
I'm sure the kids are still using it, but, like, I don't see people under the age of, like, 25 on there.
Well, yeah.
Because I'm watching things about old films and I'm watching things about board games. I'm like, I'm not watching the dances. Oh, Read Weens got to get in the dancing game. We can show off your
dance.
cool...
The floss.
Yeah, the flossing.
Yeah. I don't even remember the TikTok login. Or you logged in, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I still have it.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, Frankenstein, life-changing book. At least to me.
Yeah, no, it's... I mean, I can't say it really shook my foundation too much, personally. I think it might be just because I felt... Even though I hadn't read it, it felt like home.
Yeah.
You know? I'm so familiar with the story through its various adaptations, and... I don't know, it just, yeah, I slipped right in. It was very, very good.
Yeah.
But...
I don't know, it felt... even though there's been a million adaptations, and even though it felt familiar, at the same time it felt wholly unique to me. Like, it really felt different from everything.
Yeah,
maybe it's the way it's written.
That and there still is like no adaptation that fucking like really. There are some that come kind of close, but there's none that like really commit to it.
I want to rewatch the play version we watched because I felt like that was pretty accurate, but now I can't remember it. So.
That is definitely. It's probably like the screen or the stage play is probably most definitely the most accurate version. But I want to say even that had a couple pretty key differences, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But I think they. Or no, I might be getting them mixed up with the Randy Quaid movie.
It also starts with, like, the creature being born.
Yeah.
So it cuts out some of the early chunk.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I thought they did the blind old man only in that version, but I think that's the Randy Quaid.
Yeah, I remember the house being burned down. I remember that, because I remember the visuals for a stage play looked crazy.
Yeah, but typically, if it's not Frankenstein burning it down, it's like bandits.
Yeah, so I don't remember who burns it down.
Yeah.
So I gotta rewatch it because it was very good.
Yeah. True. But yeah, Frankenstein. This is a fucking classic.
Yeah. It's, I think, top 3 things we've read on this podcast.
Yeah. Probably, most definitely, for sure. I know my top 2, it'd probably be in my top 2.
Is it Dune in this?
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. If you haven't, you should read it. It's a short book, too.
Yeah,
it's like,
everybody should read it. It's like 200-ish pages.
And if you need the pictures, this version with the Bernie Wrightson illustrations are incredible. I want to get some prints of it because there are so many pictures in it that I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I think it perfectly encapsulates the vibe that the words are going for. Mm-hmm. Like, it literally goes, what am I thinking of? And I look at the page and I'm like, that's what I'm thinking of!
Yeah. And I'm excited to reread it and read the 1818 text when I do, because I want to, I don't know, check it out, see the differences for myself. Really explore them. Yeah. But yeah, so, what is on the docket for next time?
Next time on Read Weens. Oh.
Is that a dragon skull?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh god, this is hard to see. We're gonna read Ring by Koji Suzuki, which is the book that spawned the Ring movies. I've been meaning to read this for a while. I bought it like a year and a half ago, and it seems pretty short. I've heard it's really good. Yeah, it's like 280 pages. But I've also bought the sequel, so I might just read that one too, depending on how fast I go through this. But yeah, I love the Ring movie. The first one is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, so I'm very excited to read this.
Yeah, I really like The Ring. I'm not like a fanatic about it, but I generally enjoy it every time I watch it. I like both versions well enough. I prefer the original for sure, though. So yeah, I'm excited to check this out. See what differences there are, and
I hope it's completely different.
I hope it's like the beats are the same, but I hope like I don't know. It's interesting because like the movie version of it's like very like specific and pretty well laid out. So I mean, I'm interested. I'm gonna have to rewatch.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna rewatch the original
and then read the book
because it's also been a few years since I watched that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I last. Probably around the time you had first watched it, maybe.
Because I watched that and then I watched the American, and I did not like the American version at all.
I think of like American like J horror remakes, it's probably like the best, and I think it's competent, and I think it does a good enough job. But yeah, I definitely think the original is better. But yeah. Anyway.
But keeping that horror vibe.
Yeah.
But with a very different... We're going to a different part of the world. We're going to a different timeline. Because I think this was written in the 80s.
Yeah, that would probably make sense.
91? Or 91. So, wow, they really turned out that movie right afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
So... Or when was the... Or maybe it was... Maybe it was 98 that the movie came out.
Yeah.
I don't remember. So maybe not actually that fast. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. We're happy to be back. We'll see you in a month or two. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll
whenever we see you.
It's a short book. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Goodbye!